Hello students, welcome. Today we are going to talk about something really interesting from your chapter on the human eye and the colorful world. We're going to look at the common defects of vision. What exactly causes blurry vision? We will explore the three main types that are very important for your exams. So let's begin.
So here's what we'll be covering today. First, we'll start with how a normal eye actually sees. Then we'll understand what happens when vision becomes blurry. After that, we'll dive into the three main defects you need to know: myopia, hypermetropia, and finally, presbyopia.
All right, so before we can really understand what goes wrong with our vision, it's super important to first know how a healthy eye works, right? So let's begin with that. How does our eye give us that perfect, crystal clear picture of everything around us?
It's quite amazing. The human eye works almost exactly like a camera. Just look at this diagram here. Now, there are many parts, but for our lesson today, I want you to focus on just two very important things. First, this part right here, the crystalline lens. Think of it as the lens of the camera. And second, this screen at the very back, which is light sensitive. This is called the retina.
Now, this is the most important thing to remember for clear vision. The only way we see a sharp picture is if the eye lens focuses the light rays to form an image exactly on the retina. See that? Precisely on the retina. Not before it, not after it. When that image is formed perfectly on the retina, our vision is perfectly clear.
Okay, so what happens if the eye can't focus light perfectly on the retina? Well, that's when things start to look blurry. And this is what we call a defect of vision. Now, the word defect might sound a little scary, but these are actually very, very common conditions. And the best part is they can be corrected. So that brings us to the big question, doesn't it? Why does this happen? What is actually going wrong inside the eye that makes our vision blurry? Let's take a look at the main causes. Broadly speaking, there are three main reasons this can happen. The first reason is a change in the curvature, or the shape, of the eye lens itself. The second reason could be that the eyeball has either gotten a bit too long or a bit too short. And the third cause is related to aging. You see, the ciliary muscles that control the lens can become weaker over time. Keep these 3 points in mind.
Okay, let's start with our first defect of vision. This one is called myopia. You probably know it by its more common name, nearsightedness. So what does it feel like to have myopia? Well, it's quite straightforward. A person with myopia can see nearby things very clearly. For example, they can read a book without any problem. But when they look at distant objects, like, say, the blackboard from the back of the classroom, everything looks blurry. So, why does this blurring happen? Let's look at the ray diagram to understand. In a myopic eye, you can see that the light rays coming from a far-off object are getting focused too soon. So the image is formed in front of the retina instead of on it. And since the image is not landing on the retina, the distant object appears blurry. It's as simple as that. So this brings us to the two main reasons why myopia occurs. The first reason is what we call excessive curvature of the eye lens. This just means the lens has become too thick, and so it has a very strong converging power. The other reason could be an elongation of the eyeball. This means the eyeball itself has become a little longer, so the retina is now further away. In either case, the result is the same. All right, now that we understand myopia, let's move on to the second defect. This one is called hypermetropia, and it's basically the opposite of myopia. You might know it as farsightedness. So as you can guess, a person with hypermetropia has the exact opposite problem. They can see distant objects perfectly fine, but they find it difficult to see objects that are close by. So for them, reading a book or a newspaper would be a strain, and the words would look quite blurry. So what's going on inside the eye this time? If you look at this diagram, you'll see that the light rays from a nearby object are not being bent enough by the lens. The lens has weak converging power. Because of this, the point where the image should form is actually behind the retina. Since it's not forming sharply on the retina, the nearby object looks blurred. And just like the effect, the causes of hypermetropia are also the exact opposite of myopia. It can happen for two reasons. One, the focal length of the eye lens has become too long. This means the lens is too thin and its converging power is weak. Or two, the eyeball has become too small or too short. This means the retina is now too close to the lens. Okay, let's just take a moment to look at them together. This comparison is so important. Look here. For myopia, the image is formed in front of the retina. And for hypermetropia, the image is formed behind the retina. So just remember this. In myopia, the image falls short. In hypermetropia, it goes too far. This is the key difference.
All right, that brings us to our third and final defect for today's lesson. This is called presbyopia. And this one is a little different because it is directly related to the process of aging. So what is presbyopia? Simply put, it's the gradual loss of the eye's ability to focus on nearby objects as a person gets older. You must have seen older people, perhaps your grandparents, holding a newspaper or a book far away from their eyes to be able to read it. This happens because the eye's power of accommodation has weakened with age. So what causes this? Well, it's really a two-step process that happens as we age. First, the ciliary muscles, which are responsible for changing the shape of the lens, they gradually become weak. And second, the eye lens itself loses some of its flexibility. Because of these two things happening together, the eye can no longer adjust its focus properly for near objects.
So that's a quick look at the three main defects of vision. We talked about myopia, which is difficulty seeing distant objects. We talked about hypermetropia, which is difficulty seeing nearby objects. And we discussed presbyopia, which is difficulty in seeing near objects due to aging. Now, the most important question is, how are these problems corrected?
Well, that is exactly what we are going to learn in our next session. We will see how different types of lenses, concave and convex lenses, can be used to correct each of these defects. And very importantly for your exams, we will also learn how to apply these concepts to solve numerical problems. So please make sure you revise today's concepts thoroughly. I'll see you in the next class.